So, I'm carving Homer Simpson into a pumpkin here on My Sketchy Habit. Hello, my name's Patrick, I'm an artist, and this is My Sketchy Habit, where we draw every day and we don't have to be ashamed, because shame and art do not go together. Goodness and art go together. Positivity and art go together, and we have an art positive community in our Discord. Come join the Doodle Croodle and show us where you can doodle, and we will put it up here in the art gallery. Boom! This is the art gallery, I think. I want to share your art. Join the Discord to do that, and there we have a number of things, including a list of inspirations for the month. This month we're doing costume season, and the inspiration from yesterday was ice. Inspiration from yesterday was ice, and I cannot wait to see what you did with that idea. I did this with that idea, and yeah, I think it was super fun to do. I cannot wait for you to do more art. Come join the Art Positive Discord, link down below. Today we have our last pumpkin for Pumpkin Week, and I'm so glad to be sharing it with you. It is Homer Simpson. That's right, we're going to be carving Homer Simpson into a pumpkin. I'll show you how I do it, give you some tips and tricks along the way. Let's get to the carve. So today we're getting ready to draw Homer. I have this long pumpkin that I thought would work well for a Simpson-y head. We're using a dry erase marker to draw on our Homer Simpson face. You can actually see me there loading up a reference image, because use reference, there's nothing wrong with that. And you're just trying to get the impression of the character on there, so you don't have to think too hard about the shapes you're initially drawing. It also helps you to get a sense of where stuff is going to end up, and I think it works out pretty nicely as a general template. Now I'm going to come in and use my V tool to cut a line out. As I've said before, I use some specialized tools which were made for wood carving because I happen to have them, and they make the job a little bit easier. You do not need specialized tools. The only specialized tool that I recommend is buying cut-proof gloves, because cut-proof gloves mean that you won't get cut. I didn't use them for this video, but I typically use them for all of my carving, especially with bigger pumpkins, because if the weight of the pumpkin goes, if the knife gives, which it will give when you're working with pumpkins, it even gives when you're working with wood, you want to have protection, because it's going to happen. Whether you are the best in the world or not, it's going to happen. Someday something's going to give, and rather than have it give right into your hand, it's better to have a glove on. It is game time! That's the time where we play a game and I draw a picture and you guess. We're playing Guess the Image. Can you figure out what I'm drawing before I tell you what it is? Let me know how long it took you in the comments down below. Now that we've drawn our initial lines here to get a sense of our shapes, we're coming through and making stop cuts in order to remove the flesh from our pumpkin. One of the big challenges with this character is they are a 2D character, we're making 3D, and we're also working on a fairly limited material. Pumpkin is only so thick, which means that we only have so much space to work on, which means that we're going to have to create the illusion of depth as we go around. You can see here I'm starting to shape these eyes out. I've already cut deeper in behind this main eye using a stop cut. A stop cut is where you cut a line in and then you cut towards it so that the piece just comes out. This means that you don't ever overshoot your shot. And so we're just removing all this layer. I did ultimately decide to keep a little bit of layer of the orange for the collar of his shirt. Pumpkin carving is all about creating texture and depth, and we got to use everything we can to our advantage. So we're using the skin here to help create some extra detail. I almost kept the mouth on there to create the 5 o'clock shadow that Homer has, but it didn't allow for the shaping that I needed to do, and so I decided not to in the end. Speaking of shaping, here we are trying to shape in our eyes and begin to create the depth we need in order to read like a 3D thing. Now, we're not going to make a perfectly 3D Homer. That's almost impossible for us to do unless we're gluing together full pieces of a pumpkin. Instead, we're going to be building the depth in slowly but surely so that it creates the illusion of Homer's eyes being stacked on top of each other. It's one of the hardest parts of this project, trying to get these eyes right. And so take your time, make small cuts, and begin to remove. Look at your pumpkin, different angles, give it a shot. You can see me there, I'm just looking. and carve back while you can. Remember, with carving, you can never really put stuff back on. So if you start to remove stuff and remove too much too quickly, you'll be unhappy. So take your time, work slowly, and get where you can. Now I'm cutting deep behind the eyes because we're going to need to put a nose in there. We are going to put an actual nose in there once we get to that part. This is where I decided to get rid of that 5 o'clock shadow because it's just not going to work now that I've created some of that depth. It's a little bit too high up and needs to be refined. And again, when we're creating these shadows and depths, that extra depth that we'll create in that mouth, which we're doing here with some stop cuts, will really help to sell the whole thing, right? This is all just a illusion. It's a trick to try to sell the idea that this is fully 3D. It's partially 3D, and that it's actually Homer. And so we're just trying to build the illusion of these rounded shapes, taking our time to shape it in. Here we go, shaping in the shape of our 5 o'clock shadow. You'll see actually there's a line on there. I made the shadow too small at first, and so I had to go through and I had to carve it back. You can see I'm loading my reference up again. And so I started creating that new shape, and then ultimately I will remove the thin layer to where that initial depth cut was once we are happy with our shape as it is. So Homer comes in here. We're creating the shape of his mouth. We're going to create his teeth as well, just to get a nice Homery vibe. We're making simple, smooth cuts along the edge that we created so that we can make some depth to the teeth. It's time for the Dad Joke Bad Joke, where I take the jokes that my dad sends me every single day in WhatsApp. I collect them up so I can give them back to you. And today we have one final pumpkin joke because we've been carving pumpkins all week here on My Sketchy Habit. And the joke goes as follows. What happens if you eat too much pumpkin? What happens if you eat too much pumpkin? What happens if you eat too much pumpkin? You get a tummy ache. You get autumny ache. You get a tummy ache. Autumn ache. You get a tummy ache. It's very hard to say this one. What happens if you eat too much pumpkin? You get a tummy ache. Autumn ache. Autumn? Your stomach feels bad, and it's the word autumn and autumn ache. Then a dad joke, bad joke. Let's get back to the carve. In the end, I really like the way these teeth look. I'm using my V tool quite a bit here to deepen it. You can again do this with a regular knife. You just make little small cuts back and forth to create the V, and it works just as well. You can see now we're making the lines for the teeth, and we're getting in here to start doing the ear and the nose. Now, both the ear and the nose stand out from the body, and we're going to make small little ears and noses to fill in the shape of our character. We're just lining in the shape of his clothes first, but then we're going to take our time to start carving out shapes. Now, what I do here is I go to the back of my pumpkin and I cut out a square. The back of your pumpkin is completely useless. No one's going to see the back of your pumpkin, and so if you need more material, that's the easiest place to get it. The other place to get it is to have a second pumpkin and to carve it and to take stuff from it. But for our purposes, because it's a very small thing, we can take the ear. So you can see me here slowly just shaping out the shape of the ear. This is where the gloves would be really helpful. Again, I chose not to wear gloves just for the video. But these simple small cuts can be very risky. And, you know, I'm trying my best to keep the knife away from my hands, but mistakes happen. And if I'm not careful, I could have gotten myself very hurt. So I focus my attention on this, trying to get the ear just right. Then I come in with my V tool and create the shape of it. We're also going to do this for the nose. Now the nose, it's not as important to be perfectly rounded. Of course, we're going to take our time, slowly make the cuts that we're going to make till we're happy with the kind of nose that we have. And I'm just sort of testing it time and time again, cutting it back slowly but surely till I have a nose. I basically created a one-sided rounded nose, keeping the orange on the back of it, because it was unnecessary to carve a full rounded nose for the purposes of our image. Because our image has this sort of 3/4 turn, only a portion of the nose is facing outwards, which means that we can sort of cut the corner there just a tiny bit. Now, when it comes to attaching things to your pumpkins, there's nothing better than toothpicks. You can see here, in the most basic sense, I stabbed a toothpick in it, and then I basically had a toothpick nose that went right through the pumpkin and is in there. Now, it won't hold in the end. The same with my ear. I use this to hold my ear. I ran into a little bit of trouble, and I realized that I gotta step it up to one step further. And we're gonna use something super magical and wonderful. which is of course super glue. We're gonna do that in a little bit. Coming in here, just cutting little circles for the eyes. These will be effective once we get light in our pumpkin, and not super effective as it goes for now. We're also going to use some of our skin here because we need Homer to have the hair that makes his hairline. And so I cut out 4 pieces to go along the head, and I tried to use toothpicks to hold them in. Now sometimes you can push things through a toothpick kind of like that and push them flush, and I found in this case it did not work very well. So I gave it a shot, tried, and it didn't work. You see me trying to figure it out here. Work. It looks okay, but it doesn't look great. So I will ultimately give up on doing it this way and get myself some super glue. Now super glue surprisingly holds well onto a pumpkin. It might create a little bit of a crust, so you got to be a little bit careful, but ultimately it will not, it will stick to the pumpkin real well. Of course the pumpkin is ultimately going to shrivel up and die, and so the glue won't hold forever. But it is a great way to attach stuff to a pumpkin. Now you got to be really careful with super glue. You don't want to get that stuck to you. You don't want to get pumpkin stuck to you for the rest of your life. And so you can see here I've got my super glue, and I'm going to begin gluing in pieces. The nose was falling out a bunch, and so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to super glue everything. I'm going to do that for the ear as well, just to lock them into place so that I don't have any trouble with it. I start gluing these on, and I realize they're a little bit too thick. So I do ultimately take them off and glue them back on again after I cut them. I do get a bunch of super glue on my fingers. It's terrible to do it this way, but sometimes that happens. So I'm actually cutting it on the face, which again, not the best way of doing it, but I was trying to deal with stuff already being glued on there. So in the end I gave up and just took them off and did them properly, because that's what good artists do, not lazy artists like me. We create a nice V shape here, get him on there, and we basically have everything we need for our wonderful looking Homer Simpson pumpkin. Why don't we check out the final reveal of our Homer? And that is the end of our pumpkin carving of Homer Simpson on a pumpkin, and I think he turned out absolutely wonderful. It was a lot of fun to try to do something that is so iconic and so easy to visualize. It meant a lot of challenges, of course, but I think it turned out pretty good in the end. I would love to see it if you've tried this pumpkin or any of the other pumpkins we've done this week. We've done 5 pumpkins this week, and if you missed any of them, you should go back and check them out. Lots of tips, lots of ideas on what to do with your pumpkin this season. And if you do, I would love to share that with other people, to show what you worked on, what you tried to do. We're art positive, and we have an art gallery where we love to share your art. All you have to do is join the Discord down below, become a member of the Doodle Croodle, and show us what you can doodle. And it would be awesome to see what you do with your pumpkins, or with any other art that you're doing, whether it's related to the channel or not. We're an art positive place, and we want to help people take joy from their art, not just complicated feelings. We do have one more prompt for today. Of course, we have our October inspiration sheet, which is a month-long inspiration around the theme of costume season. And today's word is mice. Today's word is mice. Make of it what you will, and share it with us by joining the Doodle Croodle and showing us what you can do. Discord link down below. We've arrived at the end of Pumpkin Week, which is always sad. I had a great time carving these pumpkins. I hope you got something from these videos and enjoyed watching them. If you haven't had a chance, please share these videos with some folks, because I think it's really cool and interesting, and there's not a lot of pumpkin carving out there. It's something I really enjoy doing, and of course it's very seasonal, so I don't get to do it all the time. We do have a new theme coming next week. Of course, we have finished up Pumpkin Week this week, and next week we're going to be doing Magic the Gathering cards that I've never heard of, which means if you're a Magic the Gathering fan, it's perfect, and if you're not a Magic the Gathering fan, it's also perfect, because you get the built-in weird prompt that goes off the rails in a number of places. I cannot wait to share that with you. For now, we have arrived at the end of our video, which means it's time for me to remind you the one rule of my sketchy habit, despite what I just said about sharing this video with people and letting people know about the pumpkin carving. The one rule of my sketchy habit, which is really our sketchy habit, is this: don't tell anyone about our sketchy habit. That's between you and me. Till next time, friends, keep being awesome. Bye!